and workers' rights, everything from unemployment issues to employment issues, workplace conditions. NELP has been around for decades doing that work, and we have the privilege of having this fireball, this young black woman, leading the organization at this critical time. So let's give Rebecca Dixon a round of applause. And she is also a brand new board member of the Mississippi Workers Center for Human Rights.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
So I am also originally from Brookhaven, so Mississippi native, back home in Mississippi. So it's good to see everybody. I'm so glad you all took time out of your day to come out. NELP is a nonprofit workers' rights and policy and advocacy organization. It has been a leading voice in the workers' rights movement, committed to transformative legal and policy solutions, research, and advocacy. And alongside partners like Drew and the Workers Center, we fight for workers to win a good jobs economy. This means fighting for higher pay, just benefits, secure and safe jobs, and support at each stage of a worker's life, including when they are between jobs. We work with workers and worker leaders like you to build worker power and to challenge the rules that allow corporations to exploit and abuse working people. We are transforming precarious work by raising the floor so that every job, whether it's a temp job or a perm job, a gig job or an hourly job, is a good job, and everyone that wants a job can get a job. 55 years ago, NELP was created to support opportunity for black workers getting access to jobs and better wages, benefits, and fair treatment. And most of all, to make the equal opportunity that was promised in the Civil Rights Act of 1964 into a reality. Until this law, it was legal in much of this country to discriminate based on race, color, national origin, and religion. NELP litigated cases and educated legal services attorneys around Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, a law prohibiting discrimination based on race at work. This week, we lost one of our powerhouses in the civil rights movement, poet and activist Nikki Giovanni, and I'd like to leave you with some of her words. Rosa Parks by Nikki Giovanni. This is for the Pullman porters who organized when people said they couldn't, and carried the Pittsburgh Courier and the Chicago Defender to black Americans in the South, so they would know that they were not alone. This is for the Pullman porters who helped Thurgood Marshall go south and come back north to fight the fight that resulted in Brown v. Board of Education. Because even though Kansas is west, and even though Topeka is the birthplace of Gwendolyn Brooks, who wrote the powerful The Chicago Defender sent a man to Little Rock, it was the Pullman porters who whispered to the traveling men, both the blues men and the race men, so that they would know what was going on. This is for the Pullman porters who smiled as if they were happy and laughed like they were tickled when some folks were around, and who silently rejoiced in 1954 when the Supreme Court announced its 9-0 decision that separate is inherently unequal. This is for the Pullman porters who smiled and welcomed a 14-year-old boy onto their train in 1955. They noticed his slight limp, and he tried to disguise it with a doo-wop walk. They noticed his stutter, and probably understood why his mother wanted him out of Chicago during the summer when school was out. 14-year-old black boys with limps and stutters are apt to try to prove themselves in dangerous ways when mothers aren't around to look after them. So this is for the Pullman porters who looked after the 14-year-old while the train rolled the reverse of the Blues Highway from Chicago to St. Louis to Memphis to Mississippi. This is for the men who kept him safe. And if Emmett Till had been able to stay on the train all summer, he may have grown, he would maybe grown a bit of a punch, certainly lost his hair, probably worn bifocals and bounced his grandchildren on his knee, telling them about his summer riding the rails. But he had to get off that train and ended up in Money, Mississippi, and it was horribly, brutally, inexcusably, and unacceptably murdered. This is for the Pullman porters who, when the sheriff was trying to get the body secretly buried, got Emmett's body on the northbound train and got his body home to Chicago, where his mother said, "I want the world to see what they did to my boy." And this is for all the mothers who cried and for all the people who said, "Never again." And this is about Rosa Parks, whose feet were not so tired, but it had been, after all, an ordinary day, until the bus driver gave her the opportunity to make history. This is about Mrs. Rosa Parks from Tuskegee, Alabama, who was also the field secretary of the NAACP. This is about the moment Rosa Parks shouldered her cross, put her worldly goods aside, was willing to sacrifice her life so that that young man in Muddy, Mississippi, who had been so well protected by the Pullman porters, would not have died in vain. When Mrs. Parks said no, a passionate movement was begun. No longer would there be reliance on the law. There was a higher law. And when Mrs. Parks brought the light of hers to expose the evil of the system, the sun came and rested on her shoulders, bringing heat and life of truth. Others would follow Ms. Parks. 4 young men in Greensboro, North Carolina would say no. Great voices would be raised, singing the praises of God and exhorting us to forgive those who trespass against us. But it was the Pullman porters who safely got him to his grand-uncle, and it was Mrs. Parks who could not stand the death, and in not being able to stand it, she sat back down. Together, we can make change. NELP stands with you, and no matter what, we won't stop, and we won't give up in this fight with you until every single job, coast to coast, north to south, is a good job and supports families thriving and communities thriving. Thank you.